One of the things we often sit with when we talk around digital transformation is we ask the question, why this topic? We're here to talk around digital transformation, and why would we start talking around identity assurance and modern cybersecurity threats? Reality is, yesterday we all had experienced difficulties on certain platforms. But what if that outage yesterday was not everybody else, but it was you? It was only your organization that was out, and it was only you that was experiencing connectivity issues because someone had hacked you. And that is a very real threat today as we move into digital transformation. So I often bring up the slide where I talk around the future of cybersecurity. And the first thing that we all did is we went digital. If I think about the banks brought out apps. And everybody spoke around digital. Then we started increasing our digital footprints. And every organization that I deal with today has some form of digital transformation policy, procedures, programs, or even digital transformation functions within their business. And what we're then creating is we're creating this connected ecosystem. And if you look at how you connect it from your mobile device through to your laptop, through to your tablet, and then through to your actual systems, we all today are sitting here, and I'll guarantee that a lot of us are not needing our laptops because we've got mail on our phones. We're creating this connected ecosystem that we can even go in and check our financials of our various companies and how we're doing on that day from our mobile devices. So we're creating this connected ecosystem, and then we are always asked as IT is to do more with less. And that is the culture of cybersecurity today. And the other culture that we've often got is we've got this culture of the cyber threat. So the top concerns of our CIOs and our CISOs today is still cyber threat. I've attended probably hundreds of these conferences in the last 10 years, and somewhere there's been a track on cybersecurity. It's been on everybody's minds, but what have we done about it? And I'll get into that just now. It's how do we connect into this ecosystem? How do we see the various options of identifying who has got access into this ecosystem? And we've created all these systems, and I guarantee you, and I apologize to the CISOs in the room, and I apologize to the IT security guys, but one thing we've done in security is whenever we've seen a problem, we've bought a tool. Okay? And we've got 10, 12, 13 different tools within our ecosystem in IT so that we feel protected. The more tools we have, the more we are protected. But that has created such noise within our IT security engineers that we cannot respond to the actual threat. I was dealing with a company about 2 weeks ago. It wasn't actioned, and they detected it the next morning because that particular engineer had 200 or 300 others that were coming through at the same time. So we don't have the time to go through all of this, and we're now needing to start to get smarter about how we deal with things. And often in cybersecurity, we spend days thinking about how we can secure it. We spend months working on the plan. We spend years convincing Exco to give us the budget, and then it takes one person, one person on this side of the keyboard, and I've got other names for that I won't use today, that goes and destroys all of that and takes us back into spending days, spending months, spending years, getting the budget. And it all comes down to, how do we identify the person? How do we identify the machine? How do we identify the object on our ecosystem? So let's just go through some stats. Sorry, 20 million devices found using the default password admin. On service accounts today, how many of us on our servers, when we get our servers, they've got the default password admin. And I guarantee you, in an organization, you've got a password called admin. How many of our users have taken a phrase, and I was doing a presentation yesterday, and the Wi-Fi password of the venue that I was at had their name 2023. And I guarantee you within the next couple of weeks they're going to change it and realize they haven't changed it from 2023. It's going to be the name 2024. How many of our users have done that? And they've complied with it, and it's fitted with our policy because it's the right length, it's got an uppercase, it's got a lowercase, it's got a character, and then we've just changed one letter on it. How many of our users? Phishing is responsible for 70% of data breaches. And phishing is only about one thing. Phishing is about getting an identity in your ecosystem. It's about getting an in on an identity within your infrastructure, whether that's on the user side, on the server side, or on the network side. 70% of breaches. And what we've often done is we've neglected this. So we start off with looking at identification and authentication. The user name identifies who that person is. Now the problem we've got on the username is we've probably got more than one system and we're not using single sign-on. Or single sign-on cannot be enabled because they're using another directory service other than Active Directory. So now what you've got is you've got users having to remember different usernames on different applications. Over and above that, we've got passwords that prove who that identity is. So the password proves it. Now some organizations have moved to passwordless. Now what does passwordless mean? It means we're using biometrics. Okay, so we're either using a fingerprint, we're using our facial recognition. How many of us on our phones or on our tablets or even on the new modern laptops, you just put your fingerprint in and you've got it? Okay, if you're anything like me, when I was young, I went and I picked up a burning piece of wood in a fire. And I burnt the fingertips. I've got very little fingerprints on this hand. So when I go to the States and they use biometrics, 9 times out of 10, I've got these 6'6" security guards standing next to me within 5 minutes. They're escorting me into a room, and they're now trying to verify that I am the person of who I'm holding the passport with, that I've applied for the visa, and that I'm legally allowed to be there. And often this is what we don't think about when we go to biometrics, because behind biometrics is a password. Behind the password is an identity. So we're often protecting the password and we're doing everything there, but we forget about the actual identity. that can get us into anywhere. Two issues with password management on Active Directory. The first is that you'll see there's policy enforcements, but you can't do characters. You can't say it's this, it's that, you do the strings, so we've got a compromisation on the settings. There's also custom rules across multiple applications. The second problem we face is we thought about 5-6 years ago, it was the right thing to do multi-factor authentication. So we all employed multi-factor authentication from various security companies. And what we're finding out now is that our users have got what we call multi-factor authentication fatigue. So they don't even look at that pop-up that's coming, they just click. And the hackers have identified that. And so they're starting to give false MFA alerts. As soon as you do a false MFA alert and you click next, your identity has been compromised. So how safe are you with multi-factor authentication? Weak passwords can be easily compromised. So you get a non-privileged user, and he goes and he finds a malicious PowerShell script. And everybody says to me that these are hard to come by. I dare you to go into ChatGPT and try and find a malicious PowerShell script. It will come up. You deploy that into an infrastructure and you will get passwords. It is that simple. So I often get the objection that, oh, we're secure, nobody can get into us. And then I've started to challenge how many of us have taken server engineers into our server room, and they've come to fix our hard drives, they've come to fix our chips. And what we've done is we've given them the server password, we've given them admin rights on that, so we've given them the server admin rights. Have we changed the password when that engineer leaves? So they've walked out of our business with an IP address onto a server with a username, with a password. They embed a PowerShell script on that, they walk out with all our passwords. Now please, I'm not saying any of our hardware manufacturers are that devious. I mean, they might be devious in their pricing, but they're not devious in that way. But that's where we're getting to. And that's how easy it is to get into our infrastructure. Every security breach that has happened or will take place, passwords holds top place. And the second thing that happens with that is what happens when someone gets the identity and gets the password. It comes down to what state of permissions do they have within our organization. Have we checked the permissions that our users have, that our super admins have, what groups they belong to, what is their password status? How many inactive accounts are sitting not on just Active Directory, but on the other applications? I left an organization a while back, and it's a long while back, and a year later, I wanted to try something, and I actually had access to the HR system a year later. They hadn't removed me off one of their systems. This is reality that we are all facing. And in IT, we are normally the last to know when someone joins, and we're normally the last to know when someone leaves. And then all of a sudden, we've got to be protected. And we held accountable for our protection. So what have we got on those? What are our mailbox users and the permissions? What are the permissions on our data storage? Who's got access to our data storage? Who's got access to our shared storage? What access permissions have they got? And then lastly, on our Azure AD objects, which members are assigned to the admin role? And often these, together with what we do on MFA, together with when we leavers, movers, and joiners, we start getting to what I call the autonomy of our IAM solutions. So the first thing we do is we identify. So we onboard or we offboard. Then we authenticate, and whether that's through passwordless biometrics, through the password. After that, we give them authorization. So we say, you are authorized into this particular thing. And it is only once we've done the authorization can we hold someone accountable. So accountability needs to have identification, authorization, and authentication. If you don't have any one of those three, you can't hold anybody accountable. Now, especially in our infrastructure teams and our networking teams, we share passwords. I guarantee you there are passwords that are shared. How do we hold someone accountable for malicious code on our basic server infrastructure if we don't know who actually it was? And that's because we don't have the right identification. And it's only then that we will have proper security on our directory, our passwords, our network, our cloud storage, and we will be compliant. But initial access is granted with onboarding, and then we take away that access with offboarding. And this is fundamentally what we need to do in our IAM solutions, in our identity and access management solutions. So we've got to identify. We then got to authenticate that that person is who they say they are. We've got to give them authorizations. We've then got to give them access into those resources. And finally, we can hold them accountable. Lastly, I'm going to talk around time-bound access. And often this is one of the solutions that we've done when we talk around privileged access management. We start putting in time-bound access. And this is one of the more secure ways because you're giving someone access for a particular time to do a particular job. And in that process, you can then do accountability and recording. So you've got a group or a person, you give them access into a certain resource, and you give them that access for a specific time frame. And that gives you then the secured permissions. So access is automatically revoked after that time frame. In the infrastructure teams and in the infrastructure teams we deal with and within the networking teams we deal with, we need to link this in with our change management process. Because now we're starting to see that it's not all just about identity and access management, it's how do we link this into change management to get the right approval for that change to actually take place. So some suggestions I've given is strengthen your password requirements across your infrastructure. This is not just about the end user. It is about our infrastructure teams, it's about our networking teams, but it's also checking on our users. So I was watching a TV series a couple of days ago, and they were trying to get into someone's computer, and someone had the bright idea to look on the desk, and on the desk was a post-it. And on the post-it was the username and password. How many of us are seeing that with our users? I guarantee you, if you had to do a spot check on every member in your organization and just go to their notebook, their paper notebook that they're currently using, flip to the back page, just open it up, and I guarantee you somebody is going to have their username and password written in the back of their notebook. Because they've always got that with them. So I just write it down here. It's not an issue. I've got it with me. But that is what we need to start checking. We need to start doing multi-factor authentication on our endpoints as well as on our remote desktop sessions. Password resets and account unlocks. One of the easiest ways is when a super user unlocks an account, can change a password. Are we getting an alert on our Active Directory for passwords that are set to never expire? Has a user been created at 2 o'clock in the morning where the password is set to never expire? We need to start putting those alerts at the top and start doing alert configuration. We need also to start doing conditional access. Conditional access means that you get an access for a specific period of time for this particular task to that particular resource. And as soon as we start doing conditional access, we start limiting our exposure. And then seamless, secure, one-touch access. Let's stop asking our users to remember 10 to 20 different usernames and passwords. Let's start getting single sign-on across our identities, across our applications and across our infrastructure. Because we're often very, very quick to blame our end user, but how easy are we making it for our end user to do business with us? Sorry, I switched that off. And lastly, I just want to mention that we as Manage Engine, we're all about aligning our IT to business. Let's not start becoming a hindrance to business by doing the security things we are currently doing. And I've sat in organizations where they need to sign on here, do multi-factor, then they've got to get onto the endpoint, they've got to sign on, do multi-factor authentication. They're then expecting the user to get something out within 20 seconds, but just the security sign-ons are taking them half an hour. Business is not going to align with that. So we're all about bringing business and IT together and making that a seamless integration. So if you want to reach out, please, we are at the back. You'll see the bright yellow signs as you go in. That's not because we're cowards and, normally yellow stands for cowards. We're actually quite bright. And I'm not saying that from an intelligence point of view, from a color point of view. But please come and have a chat to us. Let's look at how we can help you see if you are secure. How secure is your identity? And let's stop the security breaches. Thank you.
All right.